Well, good morning to all of you. I am Mr. Raghavendra LR, HOD, PDA, and coordinator of IQSC. I extend a warm welcome to all the participants for today's webinar on the topic the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Participants are requested to mute their audio and video and don't present in middle of the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box. I will bring them up after the presentation. May I request our principal, Dr. A.S. Puama, to introduce and welcome the dignitaries of the webinar. Over to you, madam.
Let me at the outset say how delighted I am to welcome you all to this national webinar on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. We are all aware that education maintains and accelerates overall development by preparing and developing manpower resources required for a nation at all levels. There is no sector of a nation's economy that can grow without specific attention being directed towards the development of its human resource base. As such, we have today two very important speakers who will enlighten us on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education because they are at the helm of higher education sector. One, our dear Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University, Dr. P. Subramania Edapaditaya, and the other, Dr. Anita H.S., Professor and Registrar Evaluation of the University of Davangere. They are the best resources we have as subject experts with valuable insights and solutions concerning the subject at hand. Dr. P. Subramania Edapaditaya is a Mangalore University, is the cream of the Mangalore University, as he was the first rank holder with a gold medal at the MCOM postgraduate level in 1982 from the very own university in which he is the captain today. A real feather on the cap. He is a PhD holder from the Mangalore University. His thesis was on the area of consumer behavior. He worked as professor, trainer, and consultant at National Institute of Training for Industrial Engineering, Mumbai during 1994-95, and he published 46 research papers in national and international journals of repute. He did his postdoctoral research at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham Trent University, England, on HRD policies and practices, a cross-national study of India and Britain under the Commonwealth Fellowship Scheme during 2001 and 2. He has successfully supervised 21 PhD scholars in the areas of human resource management, human resources development, and marketing. He received an international award entitled eLearn International Award 2003 from Scotland, UK, for his best research paper on trends and status of corporate e-learning and Indian experience. He received the prestigious Devang Mehta National Award for Best Teacher in Human Resource Management in November 2009. He worked as the finance officer of Mangalore University, as the registrar, and also as the registrar evaluation of Mangalore University. He was the member coordinator of NACPIAT in Bangalore. I extend a very warm welcome to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. P. Subramania Edapaditaya, to this national webinar. The resource person of today's webinar, Dr. Anita H.S., is a professor and registrar evaluation of the University of Davangere, has a mine of credentials to her professional bandwagon. Her professional profile runs into 21 pages, and I was thoroughly emboldened to go through it. She is a paragon of inspiration to young minds. Apart from regular teaching, she has served as an administrator in various 38 key positions, to name a few, as finance officer, founder director of IQAC, chairperson of Davangere University Affiliation Committee, academic council member, and syndicate member of Davangere University, dean, faculty of education, member of planning, monitoring and evaluation board, Davangere University, member, board of appointment in various universities, member, board of studies in various universities, member of doctoral committee in various universities, adjudicator, examiner for evaluation of PhD in various universities, member of NAC peer team, and a member of UGC advisory committee, and so on. She has academic association with other universities. Dr. Anita has published 4 books with citation. Her book, Operations Research, was published as a text for MBA and MCOM students. She had completed 3 major research projects and has many research publications to her credit in and around 19 international journals. She has successfully published research papers in 77 national journals. Dr. Anita has presented papers in various international conferences in places like Seoul, Korea, Tunis, Tunisia, Vancouver, Canada, and at Cairo, Egypt, and so on. She has also presented papers in 29 national conferences. Dr. Anita has successfully given research guidance to 11 PhD scholars who were awarded with a doctoral degree, and 4 PhD scholars are still pursuing their research work under her guidance. She has guided 25 MPhil scholars. She has also organized many international and national conferences. She has delivered 11 special lectures, and to top it all, Dr. Anita was awarded Sadhana Puraskar Award for Academic Excellence by the Kuvempu University in 2008. Dr. Anita is undoubtedly a multifaceted, thoroughbred professor and administrator, and I wish we shall be able to retrieve the maximum input from her on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Anita to today's webinar as the chief speaker. A warm welcome to you, madam. We have with us the Director of Kaveri Education Society, Professor I.K. Biddappa, former Principal of Kaveri College, Virajpet, who is there with us to encourage us in undertaking academic programs of this kind. I thank him for accepting our invitation to preside over the webinar. He was instrumental in establishing an ancestral home called Ainmane in the college campus, with a view to preserve and revive Kodava cultural heritage and tradition in the land he was born. I extend a cordial welcome to you, sir. I wish all of you all the best with today's national webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Now, I request today's president of the webinar, Professor I.K. Biddappa, Director, Kaveri Education Society, Gonikoppal, to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Good morning. I am Professor Biddappa, Governing Council member of Kaveri Education Society, and also the former principal of Kaveri College, Virajpet. I'm very glad to be a part of this national level webinar on the most burning issue across the globe, that is impact of COVID-19 on higher education. On this occasion, let me congratulate Dr. A.S. Pooma, the principal of Kaveri College, Virajpet, Dr. Ananda Karla, HOD of Commerce, Ms. Raghavendra, IQAC coordinator and HOD of BBA department, and all the teaching and non-teaching faculty who are responsible in organizing this online program, which is no doubt the need of the hour. As a representative of the management of Kaveri Education Society, I once again welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Edapadithaya, eminent resource person, the Registrar of Evaluation of Davangere University, Professor Anita, and all the participants to this most relevant webinar today organized by the Kaveri College, Viratpet. As the president of today's program, my task is very easy because we have the most learned resource person, Professor Anita, to enlighten all of us. Friends, COVID-19 pandemic has taken global shape, affecting almost all countries of the world. Now, we can see its impact on various sectors of the economy, like production, consumption, distribution, exchange, employment, income, saving and investment. It has affected the GDP and created panic in the society. We can see its impact on economic, political, social, religious and cultural fields also. The society is of the opinion that life and welfare of mankind is more important than the material wealth. The primary concern of the society at present is about the safety of the life rather than the material wealth. Alfred Marshall and other neoclassical economists were of the opinion that man can create wealth, but wealth cannot create man. If you survive only, you can enjoy your wealth. This is true in our present situation. Pandemic COVID-19 has created a kind of uncertainty in the arena of higher education, especially among the policymakers, the teaching faculty, the parents, and students. Regular academic activity has come to a standstill. Stakeholders are in a state of confusion and have been affected to a very great extent. Now everything is moved online. This webinar is one such example. Rural education has always been challenged by limited internet access. It is said only about 45 crore people of our total population have access to the internet and thus to e-learning. The people residing in rural areas are still very much deprived of the latest advancements and therefore hampering the cause of online learning. It is very much true in the case of poor people. Now, virtual classrooms are not only dependent on e-lectures but also require one to have access to e-content and online study material, practice sheets, etc. as well. And that's where we lag behind, as India is not fully equipped to make education to reach all corners of the nation via digital platforms or online classrooms. The students who are not privileged like others will be held back due to the current result, and there is no denying that. But universities and the government of India are relentlessly trying to come up with a solution to solve this problem. Uncertain times call for stronger measures, and the education industry has been stepping up to take some. The pandemic has been working as a catalyst for the educational institutions to grow and opt for platforms and techniques they have not used before. The times are changing, and the theories have always pointed out towards the survival of the fittest. Surviving these crises with a different approach and digitalizing the sectors are the two elements which will get the industry through storm and wash away the blues of pandemic. So, there is a great challenge for the educational institutions imparting higher education due to pandemic COVID-19. I have read in some newspapers that about 160 professional colleges have been closed down and around 200 colleges have not applied for the renewal of affiliation. In this changed scenario, let there be a fruitful, a constructive discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. Let the deliberations be an eye-opener to the policymakers to arrive at a conclusion for the appropriate measures to be taken to check the effects of COVID-19. Thanks to the new education policy of the government, which aims at total transformation in the system, as it was rightly told by our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this new education policy transforms job seekers to job creators. Further, he said, new education policy is quite innovative, creative, and constructive, and it will definitely make India as one of the world-class knowledge centers. Further, I wanted to tell something about our institutions. Kaveri Education Society has few institutions in its hand, imparting quality education with perfect academic discipline. May it be Kaveri College Virajpet, may it be Kaveri College Gonigoppa, Kaveri PU College Virajpet, Kaveri PU College Gonigoppa, and Kaveri Polytechnic, and so on. And I congratulate all the principals, the members of teaching and administrative staff for their committed and selfless service in imparting quality education to the stakeholders. Before I conclude, I pray Lord Ishwara Yudhappa, Mother Kaveri, and Thai Mandatava to eradicate COVID-19 from the entire world and shower their blessings on all of us. I wish a great grand success for this national level webinar organized by the Kaveri College Virajpet under the leadership of Dr. A.S. Puoma, Dr. Ananda Karla, and Ms. Raghavendra. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, as our Vice Chancellor has busy schedule, we will relay the keynote address rendered by Professor A. Subramania Edapadithaya, Vice Chancellor, Mangalore University.
Head of the Department of Commerce, Dr. Ananda Karla. Greetings from Mangalore University. Esteemed Director, Professor I.K. Vidappa, Chief Patron and the Principal of this great institution, Dr. A.S. Puama, Distinguished Resource Person and my well-wisher, Professor Anita H.S., Registrar Evaluation, Davangere University, Head of the Department of Commerce, Dr. Ananda Karla, Mr. Raghavendra, Convener of IQAC, distinguished members of the faculty, the participants of this one-day national level webinar on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to be a part of this very relevant and important national level webinar, because COVID-19 has created an era of radical uncertainty for all of us. We cannot run away from this kind of pandemic, and we must know how to live with this pandemic for a very long period of time. It has affected higher education domain in several ways, because today normally we talk about the several crises created by COVID-19. I confess, along with the crisis, COVID-19 also created a window of opportunities for all of us. Because all these days, the idea of webinar was totally unheard of. So thanks to COVID-19, today every college, every department is interested in organizing webinar of different kinds everywhere. Therefore, digitization and connectivity are making a lot of positive noise in the higher education sector. Now, when I visualize the higher education environment in the academic year 2020-21, I come out with a model called 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It means whether we like it or not, during the academic year 2020-21, every institution providing higher education must devote at least 1/3 of its time for online teaching, learning, and evaluation processes. Another 1/3 of the time must be devoted to the upgradation of the skill mix of the learners. Today, we should not prepare the students for a particular job or for even a career, but for their lives. That's very, very important. In that case, it is not enough if a student acquires the knowledge, but more importantly, the skill mix is required. National Skill Development Corporation has eloquently talked about the problem of de-skilling of human resource. Therefore, the biggest challenge is how to upgrade the skill mix of the students. So it means today everything will be available in the Google. Normally I say 5 W's and 1 H are very important for a student to become a street smart person. 5 W's are what, why, where, when, who. We will find appropriate answers for all these 5 W's in the Google. No wonder. But the biggest question for all of us is to find answer to only 1 H. That means how to put it into practice. How to convert theory into practice. Therefore, in the portals of the higher education institutions, in the classroom and also outside the classroom, students must be made to acquire both soft skills and the life skills so that the learner will become a complete person. Therefore, 1/3 of our learning time must be devoted to the inculcation of different types of skills. For example, effective communication skills are very important, or personal interpersonal effectiveness, or how to handle your stress, or called stress management, time management skills, or how to prepare your biodata or resume or curriculum vitae, how to face an employment interview, negotiating and counseling skills, or presentation skills. So likewise, there are a n number of skills to be possessed by a person. Then only you will become more employable. Then the remaining 1/3 of the learning time must be devoted to what we call experimental or experiential learning during the academic year 2020-21 onwards. because every student must be given hands-on experience. What I am trying to impress upon you that during the academic year 2020-21, I call it post-COVID-19 scenario. The model should be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It means 1/3 online teaching, learning, evaluation process, 1/3 physical face-to-face learning experience. Then the last 1/3 should be experimental or experiential learning through project work, internship, field visits, or case study, or a kind of interactive mode of acquiring better skills personally by each and every learner. That's why Swami Vivekananda has rightly said, education is nothing but the manifestation of perfection which is already there in a person. Therefore, COVID-19 has become the biggest equalizer of all time. COVID-19 doesn't know the borders of a country. It doesn't require passport or visa to enter into any geographical area. Therefore, what we require is a kind of adaptability in our part, courage, confidence, and conviction to face the challenges created by COVID-19. That's very, very important. That's what today higher education. So it means one of the letters of English alphabet, the fifth letter of the English alphabet is A, B, C, D, E. This E has created three beautiful words called education, employability, and employment. Most of the colleges and universities are giving importance only the two E's called education and employment. We have to give quality education, we'll say. Then we say students must find employment. We must help them through placement services and so on and so forth. The learners, the teachers, the parents, the college administrative wing, the government or the policymakers, everybody is forgetting about another important E called employability. My conviction is in India there is no employment problem provided you are employed. Therefore, if you are enhancing the employability potential of each and every student, whether it is BA or BCom or BSc or BBA or MA or MCom or MSc or MBA or any other academic program, we must be able to convert qualification into competency. So therefore, the beauty is, what is the difference between qualification and competency? COVID-19 has been responsible for us to undertake an inward journey by asking a question, what am I and what I am up to. That is possible only when you engage ourselves in a soul-searching process. Here, qualification is not equal to competency. In our Indian corporate sector, many companies have left their vacancies unfilled for want of competent candidates, not for want of qualified candidates. We are getting young number of qualified candidates, but we are falling short of competent candidates. Therefore, competency is always made up of 5 critical ingredients. First one is K, second one is A, third one is S, fourth one is H, fifth one is V. Together it becomes an acronym called KASH-V. K stands for what? K stands for knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Domain-specific, application-oriented knowledge. As I already told you, it is not enough if you find answer for 5W, what, where, when, who, and why. The most challenging or the most sought after quality of a person is finding answer by demonstrating your ability to convert theory into practice by answering the question how, one H. Therefore, it should be application-oriented knowledge. Whether our academic degrees are equipping our learners with this kind of domain-specific application-oriented knowledge or only the raw knowledge. Then second one is A. A is nothing but attitude. Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich says, your attitude will always determine your altitude, your height of thinking process. Therefore, we should decorate ourselves with what we call positive mental attitude. You must always see the positive side of your life, positive side of an idea. So therefore, whether our learners or the students have developed a quality of visualizing the positive aspect of their lives or anything, therefore positive mental attitude called A. Then comes what I call the third element of competency formation process, that is yes. Yes is not but the skill mix. I already told you there are different skills like soft skills and life skills. These skills must be supplemented with your knowledge acquisition process to make your learning life more meaningful and impactful. Therefore, it is not one or two skills, skill mix. It is not the skills required for performing today's job or tomorrow's job. Keeping in view the demands of the employment market for the next 5 or 10 years, the students who are pursuing higher education must acquire those skills right now. Therefore, acquisition of skills is very, very important. You have to fine-tune or hone your existing skills while acquiring new skills so that you can compete in the employment market better than others. Then comes the fourth element called H. H is something the habits. Old habits die hard. Here, habits are nothing but learning habits. While pursuing your higher education in the colleges and the universities, students must acquire positive, result-oriented learning habits. These learning habits will become portable learning habits. After completing your courses, while the time of leaving your portals of your higher education institutions, you'll be carrying these marketable or portable learning habits to the workplace. And later on in the workplace, these learning habits will become work habits. For example, being punctual. Punctuality should be one of the virtues of a learner. If you have acquired the quality of being on time during your tenure as a student, then no problem. It's just like learning swimming or bicycle. You will never forget until your last breath. It means being on time, because you cannot violate this principle of punctuality. This is one of the very important work habit appreciated by almost all organizations. Therefore, this kind of habits must be acquired by the learner. The last element of converting qualification into competency taught by COVID-19 in the higher education scenario is V. V stands for what we call values. There is a holy scripture in Bible which reads like this: values left in our children touch their destiny more than valuables left to them. Therefore, it is not fat bank balance. It is not Mercedes-Benz car. It is not the material assets which will make a better human being. What is required is your ability to be universally compassionate. Today, sympathy is not required. What is required is your empathy, your ability to live in the shoes of others. Therefore, COVID-19 has taught us a very important lesson. During lockdown period, I learned it. That is, poverty anywhere will constitute a danger to prosperity everywhere. It means COVID-19 taught us a very important lesson. That is, it is not your individual health which is important. It is the health of the society. It is the health of the community. It is the health of your family members which will be responsible for shaping and reshaping your own health. That's why COVID-19 has become the biggest equalizer of all time, and particularly in the arena of higher education, we are going to change the field, because it should become a level playing field. Because today we talk about what we call access and expansion, inclusion, then the principle of equity, then affordability, then quality in higher education. COVID-19 has stated that the intelligence quotient is not important. Every student can acquire only average intelligence. It's enough. What is more important is the other 4 key elements to become a more meaningful person. That is emotional intelligence quotient. You are emotionally resilient. You should be emotionally balanced. You must know how to keep yourself cool all the time so that you can perform both effectively and efficiently. Then the third element is social quotient. Because in the society, you must be harmonious enough to become a contributory person in the society. It means you must maintain universal brotherhood so that there will be cordiality. You'll be loved by everybody. You'll become more sensible human being. you'll be liked by everybody, you'll become one of the admirers in the society. Therefore, your social fabric will be liked by everyone. So your social quotient must be very sound one. Then comes what you call spiritual quotient. Spiritual quotient is nothing but, according to Swami Vivekananda, spirituality is the science of human excellence. You must be able to unleash your potential within. Whether our higher education system in the post-COVID-19 scenario will be in a position to unleash and unlock the potential within every student, have it prepared or designed our curriculum, whether we have properly modified our pedagogical tools and techniques to take care of the challenges created by COVID-19, that should be looked at. It means that is spirituality. Look beyond the curriculum. Look beyond yourself. Look beyond the boundaries of sunset today, because tomorrow will never die. That is spirituality quotient. The last fifth one is very, very important. This is taught by what we call COVID-19 for all of us, called adversity quotient. All of us are passing through, unfortunately, the rough patch in our life because of the COVID-19. We don't know when this confusion will get over, when this era of uncertainty will be over. By December 31st, by March 2021, we don't know. God only knows. But still, this curve has not yet flattened. So it will take some more time. The point is, during that time, we must be able to handle ourselves physically, mentally, intellectually, socially, and spiritually. We should not lose our confidence. Internally, we should be very strong to successfully handle the challenges created by COVID-19, particularly during the post-COVID-19 scenario. Because now, normally we say September, the new academic year will begin 2020-21, but we don't know. Most probably, there will be only online classes. There cannot be offline classes. If everything goes fine, then during October, hopefully, God willing, we can have physical C-learning, classroom learning experienced by the teacher and the taught. So the point is, again, adversity quotient means during the difficult time, we must be able to handle ourselves. We cannot say goodbye to our active life. Therefore, intelligence quotient, average is enough. What we require more is emotional intelligence quotient, social quotient, spiritual quotient, and finally, adversity quotient. That is what, whenever we are designing and redesigning our curriculum, we should take care of one important point, that is, we should prepare the students for their lives. Thanks to the National Education Policy 2020, which talks about well-rounded development of the personality of a student. Therefore, keeping this in view, the students must know how to live successfully in the presence of several odds against us. Then only you will be a winner. Therefore, I congratulate the organizers of this one-day national level webinar on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. I know we have got a very wonderful, experienced learner resource person, Professor Anita HS. She will definitely do justice to this topic. Therefore, she will unfold all the dimensions of shocks of uncertainty created by this COVID-19 and how we can handle all these challenges ably and successfully. And I profusely thank the authorities of this Kaveri College, Virajpet, for having chosen me to deliver this keynote address. Thank you very much. All the best.
I thank our Vice Chancellor for the valuable keynote address. We will now listen to our resource person, Dr. Anita HS, Registrar Evaluation, Davangere University. Over to you, madam.
So that's why being academicians, we need to, okay, uh, as of now, everybody knows that this is such a evil that this global pandemic has created such a havoc in every field and every walk of our life, and especially this higher education is no exception. So that's why, being academicians, we need to extend our help to the higher education field and scenario, so that what best we can come out of this particular havoc, and how best we can come out, and what are all the things we need to equip ourselves to face this pandemic as such, because it has so many ill effects on higher education. So we need to look into this instead of going into the details of the educational scenario or why education should be connected to this particular COVID. Let me directly drag your attention towards some basic statistics everyone need to look into. So when we look into the higher education part, because education system as such has several stages, we are concentrating only on higher education part. So the other parts like primary, secondary and all, the government is making so many efforts in like pooling the opinions of stakeholders in finding a solution for this particular pandemic as such, and the ill effects of pandemic on the education system itself. But our focus is on higher education. So that's why let me drag your attention directly to some statistics which you are all required to know about this. The total enrollment in higher education has been estimated to be 37.4 million, with 19.2 million male and 18.2 million female. Female constitute 48.6% of the total enrollment, which is indicating that higher education is, it's increasing in such a magnitude that it's really alarming, and we are very happy that the increasing number is very attractive. The gross enrollment ratio in higher education in India is 26.3%, that is national level ratio, which is calculated for 18 to 23 years of age group. So between 18 and 23, the GER stands to be 26.3%. GER for the male population is 26.3, and for females it is 26.4%. For scheduled castes, it is 23%, and for scheduled tribes, it is 17.2%. So there was a survey which was conducted by MHRD very recently during the during the period like between February and March. They conducted a survey, and it was reported, and it is available on the web also. There are 993 universities operating, 39,931 colleges, and 10,725 standalone institutions listed on AISH. So AISH web portal has got all these statistics which you can refer. And out of them, 962 universities and 38,179 colleges and 9,190 standalone institutions have responded during the survey. And 298 universities are affiliating, that is having colleges, and 394 universities are located in rural area. This is a particular point which is been underlined because of the reason that when we are saying that this pandemic has taught a lesson for us to move towards online education, learning and even examinations are to be conducted online, there is a move. But what about the 394 universities which are located in rural areas and so many colleges which are affiliated to these universities is a question. There are several such questions which are unattended and which are to be attended by academicians like us. So another point is these institutions further reflect the student density of India, as the total enrollments in higher education every year are nearly 37.4 million, reflecting the expansion. That is, the horizon is expanding and the education industry is growing. Then there are a number of instantaneous impact on higher education due to this COVID-19, which I have identified to be online teaching and online examination has become the default mode of education during this long lockdown period in the wake of this COVID-19, because whether you want it or not, you will have to go online. That has become a necessity now. To what extent it is effective, to what extent the stakeholders are receiving it, the perception level, receptivity level, they are to be discussed in length. But without any say, you need to go for this online because there is no other go. Secondly, enthusiasts have been predicting from the last decade that technology will become the biggest intermediary of teaching and learning processes. Very interestingly, one of my PhD candidates had worked on this particular issue 10 years, a decade back, and he had come out with a suggestion that, the major finding out of the major findings, one of the major findings was that down the line 10 years, definitely we will go, if education scenario is considered, we are going for online teaching and online examination. That is proving now, because after 10 years, definitely, of course, with the force of this COVID-19, we are forced to get into this arena, but still, we are marching towards it very slowly. We were marching all these years very slowly, but this COVID has pushed us like anything that we need to get into this online learning teaching processes. Then millions of students across the globe have been driven out of their university spaces and professors are confined to their homes. Many of them are working online and they are confining themselves to homes. They don't have that much of exposure. The exposure and eye-to-eye contact with the students and the physical touch, the interactions between the students and all, they have all gone now because we are online. Higher education stands disaggregated and faculty and students are grappling with sudden new norm of completely tech-mediated teaching and learning. Definitely, we are towards it. And technology-mediated education can be termed as education 4.0. After the first three waves of education systems that evolved over 2000 years of civilization, right from Gurukula system, one master to a few pupils, and the traditional university system, one to many learners, and the distance learning, one to very many learners across the spectrum. So this now has marched towards one to many. So we are at it. Then coming to general implications of COVID on higher education in India, I have some hands-on statistics. The GER, that is gross enrollment ratio at present is, as I told you earlier, 26.6%, 3 to 6%. And the new education policy, draft new education policy during 2019, which was the committee formed for the purpose, that is the draft new education policy to be made ready under the stewardship of Dr. Kasturi Rangan. And you are all aware that it was represented by Karnataka also, being Dr. M.K. Sridhar, who was one of the members. And he had contributed his, through his able guidance, probably many contributions have been made to this new education policy. And this new education policy wants us to take this GER to 50%, from 26.6% to 50% by 2050. So whether this will happen is a question. So enrollment, as we are telling, on the other hand, enrollment is getting decreased because of the ill impact of this COVID on education system. So enrollment will decrease, warranting architectural changes, because earlier we used to have only the classroom lecturing, offline classes which have been conducted, but now it's not so. It should be a blended teaching now. So both offline and online teaching should be blended and should be offered to the students. So that's why there might be a chance of decrease in the enrollment of students. What this draft new education policy is anticipating to increase the GER to 50% may not happen because of this. And there is mobility of students getting restricted. That is, students will not be at ease to move from one university to other university. Probably most of the participants might be knowing that very instantly government, state government, that is our Karnataka government, is at developing a model curriculum to the courses, all the UG and PG courses. It's a model curriculum. So a suggestive model or structure can be given to all the universities, both public and private universities, so that at least there would be a chance of mobility of students from university to university, and there should be a parity between the credits offered to the students to make a comparison. So this move comes under this issue, that is, mobility of students gets restricted because of the impact, bad impact of this COVID-19, and definitely this is going to be overcome if some model contents and model suggestive contents and a structure is developed too. Then social, if I'm asked, the social sciences and humanities will suffer a lot when compared to scientific or science-based subjects. The most affected, because for social sciences and humanities, the society itself is a laboratory. When the mobility itself, researchers and students' mobility itself is restricted, obviously it will have an ill effect on the education system, and especially the social sciences and humanities will suffer a lot. Then localization of campuses. So this should be the need of the hour, because with this, the lesson which we have learned, need-based education should be followed by the educational institutes. Otherwise, it's a question of survival. Structural changes in educational institutions are required. You will have to customize. As an institution which you will offer, whatever you offer to the students will have to be totally customized, and whatever the offer you make should fetch you large number of such students, because you are offering quality to them. GER can only improve if you customize according to the requirement of the stakeholders and make an offer, educational offer to the society or the students. Otherwise, it's once again questionable. It can put a pressure on the capital expenditure, because the technology which is required for the purpose of equipping the educational institutions have to spend more and more on capital, on the structure. That is, if you speak of the expenditure, capital expenditure will be more, and then you will have to make ready the e-content. E-content should be made ready before you offer it to the students. And as you are customizing it, definitely more and more spending is anticipated on part of the educational institutions. Then curricular changes needed. It cannot go as it is when earlier it was to be. So it needs to be changed. Then pluralism of curriculum is the hallmark of higher education institutions. Hitherto, we used to have only descriptive type of learning, teaching, learning, and examination. But now, no more such things will remain, both descriptive and cognitive. Now, hitherto, you used to testify only the descriptive skills of the students. But now you need to, along with the descriptive skills, you need to testify even the cognitive skills of the students. So, blended pluralism, traditional mode of learning may undergo a change, because very recently UGC had said all universities should offer dual degrees, one on remote, one on distance. So students now take up dual degrees at a time. So dual degree will come, it will become a feature of educational institutions hereafter. Emphasis on blended teaching consisting of traditional and technological interventions. That is e-classrooms, smart boards, e-contents, and now there is a move on e-offices. Whether it is less paper office or paperless office is a question, but we are moving towards e-offices. So entirely the office should become electronized, and then whichever you offer to the students in the form of e-contents are to be developed, and the entire classroom with which you are offering to the students the e-contents should consist of e-classrooms and smart boards, so that you can directly reach the stakeholders. The ICT enabled methods of teaching. To some extent, this ICT had come long ago, and educational institutions were already with this ICT enabled methods of teaching, but still on the flipped classrooms were already been taken care of by the institutions. But now still we have to go ahead with ICT enabled methods to reach large number of students. There is gradual shift towards online proctored exams. We were hitherto speaking only the teaching and learning methods, but now the days have come where online proctored exams should also be conducted by the both private and public institutions, universities. Then there is a departure from the descriptive to MCQs. I told you that blended teaching and learning methods will have to be evolved. And then earlier, in order to testify the descriptive skills, we used to have descriptive answers, anticipated questions or question papers constituted by the universities or institutions. But now, multiple choice questions are to be framed to testify the cognitive skills of the students. Teachers' service conditions may suffer vis-a-vis funding for research will also be very tough hereafter. Definitely, the teachers will have a 50-50 mind. A sort of little apathy will also be there on part of the teachers who are not techno-savvy and e-ready because they are not prepared for it. Mentally, they are not prepared. So that's why their service conditions will also suffer. So it takes its own time to get adopted to the newness. It's not that easy. So to accept the newness and getting accustomed to the newness and the same thing which is to be given to the students after getting trained, departing or disseminating whatever they have to the students would also take some more time. So that's why on the one hand, the teacher service conditions would also suffer. On the other hand, the funding for research will also be very tough because so many funding agencies used to come forward to fund the research activities of the universities and colleges. But now there will definitely an ill impact of this COVID on research funding also. It will not be that easy for the colleges and universities to get funding from funding agencies. And hereafter, there would be virtual internships. It's not earlier when students used to be asked to go to the field and find out what is happening there, report it, to get into the fields to get trained. That is, the thought was to be trained on the field, but now it's no more like that. It will be virtual internships because it's a lesson we need to learn now with the COVID impact. Improving their emotional intelligence coupled with the UGC's guidelines for providing psychological support to the students will transform the education system for good. On the one hand, when we say that the teachers' service conditions will suffer, on the other hand, the research funding will also go down. On the other hand, if you look into the positive side of it, the emotional intelligence coupled with the guidelines which the UGC says that go for dual programming, dual programs can be offered to the students, and with the psychological upliftment of the students, you can totally improve the system, education system. There will be a transformation in the education system due to this change, very positively says UGC. Then universities and the government of India especially are relentlessly trying to come out with a solution to resolve this problem. They're working day and night. What should be done for this? Because there should not be a very damaging impact of this COVID on higher education. They're working relentlessly with all possible measures they're coming out with. We are seeing that so many circulars are coming because they too are new to this change and they are also working very hard to find out a solution for this pandemic and its ill effect on the higher education. A large number of Indian students, second only to China, enroll in universities abroad especially in countries worst affected by pandemic, that is the US, UK, Australia, and China. Many such students have now been barred from leaving these countries. They have been sent back to their respective countries. If the situation persists, in the long run, a decline in the demand for international higher education is expected. Sure that it will affect the movement, that is the students' mobility to other countries for higher education will definitely get affected by this. Then Center for Monitoring Indian Economy had estimated that unemployment will shoot up from 8.4% in mid-March to 23% in early April, and the urban unemployment rate to 30.9% by start of the July 2020. The rate is really alarming because the employers are not coming forward to employ those graduates who are already out because of this pandemic. Because most of you might be knowing that even the Google has downsized its HR, stating that there is no need. You have to work from home. There is no need to come to the main office. So that's why that has affected the unemployment rate. The students who procure degree this year seem to have a bleak employment future. I was speaking about those who are ready for getting employed, and now the students who procure degree this year would also face the same problem, and they don't have a good future for employment, that they would not so easily be appointed by the employers. The worst affected sectors by and large are tourism, airlines, hospitality, job market in general, and MSMEs also, where a lot of job opportunities were there, despite the fact that the center has announced Atmanirbhar Bharat package just to give a cushion to MSMEs very recently. But still, the worst affected sectors are these, where a lot of job opportunities were there for the students who were coming outside, especially who had come outside last year, and those who are able to come outside this year will have to face this problem out there. Then what policy changes are to be taken by the government as well as the other who matter in this issue? Yes. Number one is revisit ordinances, guidelines, statutes, and the very Karnataka State Universities Act has to undergo a change. That is, the ordinances, guidelines, and statutes, of course, will have to be changed. So, for example, Maharashtra government and Andhra Pradesh government very recently took a decision not to conduct examinations for SSLC and even the degree students. But these require revisiting of ordinances, guidelines, and statutes. The very Karnataka State Universities Act has to undergo change. Such amendments are to be taken up, and it needs governor's approval. So such decisions cannot be abruptly taken. So that's why, once again, revisiting such ordinances requires. So higher education institutions may face an identity crisis, especially public institutes, because when compared to private institutes, the rate of enrollment will definitely come down in case of public institutes. So that's why GER definitely will be very low in public institutes. So they will have to face an identity crisis when compared to private institutes. Funding by the government needs a relook, and everybody is knowing that facing and combating the ill effects of this COVID pandemic on part of the government itself is a challenge, because huge funding has been made by the government, extending treatment to the patients who have been positively affected by this pandemic. On the other side, funding to such public institutions, universities, and all has become a challenge for them. And you might have already come to know that the funding has gradually reduced, and because of this pandemic, and there is a gradual reduction in the normal course also, because after say 5 to 10 years of existence of a particular university, it's been the order that the institutions of universities will have to generate their own money and stand. on their own legs. So now funding by the government due to this COVID, on the COVID impact, definitely will reduce, and the government may have to relook into what should be given to the institutions. And you might be knowing that Kothari Commission had suggested that there should be a 6% rate, that is 6% should be earmarked out of GDP for the purpose of higher education. But we have been observing in the last decade that the rate is staggering between 1 to 3%, and moreover, the huge or major chunk of this particular funding will go to IIMs and IITs and other premier institutes rather than other public institutes. So that's why, once again, during this pandemic or after it, that is post-pandemic COVID-19, the government may have to relook into the funding to be made to the public institutions. External funding is less. As a result, pressure will be on the internal funding. How do institutes generate internal funding? Through the admission, through the affiliation, universities, they will generate. If internal funding is not sufficient, it would have been a matching grant would have been extended by the government. But now, if the government funding comes down, then would the institutions or universities will be capable of generating their own fund is a question. Donations and endowments will also
ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ಇದು ಒಂದು ಟೀಚರ್ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಯಾರು ಬಂದಾನ
so would the people come forward. So
ಅವರದು ಟೂ ಮಚ್ ಆಯ್ತಾ
universities have to customizing and going online. They need some capital expenditure to be made on it, for which do they have sufficient fund is a question. So certain policy changes are warranted because of this ill impact. Certain suggestions are offered for the purpose of making changes in this stage. Number one is short-term courses or diploma programs to mitigate enrollment problems. As I was telling that, dual proctored programs are to be offered to the students, where add-on courses will definitely improve their employability. That is, the students, without taking only traditional one single course offline, if online dual proctor programs are offered to the students, definitely it might, on the one hand, mitigate the enrollment problems. On the other hand, employability will also improve, because need-based employment would also be followed by the employers hereafter. If they need, they employ. If they suit their requirement, they employ. So that's why we need to prepare the students, offering some short-term courses, quickly make them ready, diploma courses, quickly make them ready to get employed in the job market. New community-oriented programs will have to be developed by the universities and colleges or other educational institutions. So we need to find out what ways we need to develop for this community-oriented programs. Redesigning of curriculum, the entire curriculum should undergo a drastic change. Probably whatever the government is taking up in finding a solution for this curriculum development, in developing model curriculum, might help at large the educational institutions. Then ICT enabled teaching and learning infrastructure should be developed to go online. Then e-content development and procurement should also be made. Impetus on continuing the existing scholarships and need be increased. In order to increase it, that is, hitherto we used to have only few scholarships offered to the students, but now the educational institutions may have to think in cushioning more scholarships to the students, because it will help them increasing the GER on the one hand, and the study becomes ease on part of the students and make them employable in the job market also on the other hand. Reorienting students towards online examination. This is a challenge which is faced by all the universities and institutions, that the students community hitherto were prepared only for descriptive examination have to be tested now for their cognitive skills through online examinations. Are they prepared? Whether the institutions are prepared on the other hand, on the one hand, on whether the students are reoriented to get examined online on the other is a question. Online proctored exams consisting of audio and video based questions should be developed. This becomes a huge task on part of the institutions because they have to do a lot of homework. They will work to prepare such things to offer. Multimedia enriched modules should also be developed to get into students' arena. In this process, I have identified 4 important positive impacts on COVID, that is impact of COVID on higher education. So number 1 is a rise in blended learning. That is, hitherto only descriptive testification was there, but now cognitive skills also be tested by the institutions. This is a good move in the field of education because students' cognitive learning ability can very well be tested. Open source digital learning solutions and learning management software to be the new norm of the hour or days to come. True that we need to accept this. Improvement in learning material. Good old descriptive way of giving material to the students will vanish now. We need to improve the very learning material which can be offered. Say, generally when I just have a deliberation with the other academicians, we have a chat with this important issue, that how to improve the learning material as such. Many of the teachers would ask or raise a question asking that whether the problem-oriented papers can be taught through online mode. We need to develop such templates and such material which will reach the students now. Hitherto, we didn't have that opportunity, but now we have an opportunity to develop such learning material. We have to rethink, relook at it and develop such things. Even with that, practical papers can also be offered to the students online. To what extent they would be effective and whether there would be interaction between the students and the teacher and the taught will have to be thought of several times. But still, there is a rise in collaborative work. So here, there is no more competition. There will be only a collaborative work. If, say, for example, a particular institute or an university is having full of infrastructure, but they don't have resources, e-resources, and other institute or university has got lot of e-resources, everything can be combined or made collaborative. They can extend helping hand to the other institutes and share. Knowledge sharing should be the order of the hour. No more competition. Competing with each other will not stand now. They have to compete with providing good e-content to the students. So that's why we need to think about it. That is, collaborative work should be made. Then, even in the post-COVID-19 era, offline or conventional education models will not become obsolete. They will not totally go off. They will survive. However, blended learning, that is a combination of classroom and online modes will be there, will be the norm. Institutions and teachers will blend the two judiciously according to the context and the content. Whatever is needed by the stakeholders will be prepared earlier and it will be given to the students. Here, the talent, the hidden talent of the teacher will also be exhibited, and whatever hidden talent students will have to be brought out. It has to be elicited by the teacher by making or blending both description and online modes, combination of classroom and online modes. Each teaching faculty needs to be massively retrained and oriented for online teaching learning mode, because hitherto we were accustomed to only descriptive way of making presentation in front of the students, but now we have to go online. At least part by part we have to go online, and massive training is required on part of the teachers. I told you that there is a 50-50 division between the teachers in institutions, both in private and public, and colleges also. A 50-50 division is there. Certain teachers have a sort of apathy towards accepting this online teaching because it has its own demerits and many such limitations. So that's why what needs to be attended to before we get into this arena is a question. While there could be content experts or the great classroom teachers, because they had such a patting all these years that they are good teachers in the classroom, but would they be able to offer the same content or improvised content online is to be looked into. They need to place equal importance to learning sciences in digital media. In the digital forum, would they be capable of offering it to the students? So this blending requires a lot of homework and lot of judicious thinking is required, and teachers will have to sit and combine the resources and then work upon it before they make an offer to the students mass. Then 4 negative impacts of this COVID on higher education. That is sluggish cross-border movements of students. As we are all aware that all of a sudden the countries in the whole globe have stopped students moving. Their movement has been restricted because this COVID has created such a habit. It has become very slow. Now countries may not accept our students so easily getting enrolled for higher education abroad. So there will be a sluggish movement of such students cross-border. Passive learning by the students. We have been observing, that is almost 3 months, from the last 3 months, every college, every university, every institute is making almost every effort to reach the students mass and every student of the institution, because they want to reach online to the students. But on part of the students, there is a sort of apathy, a little negligence. If they were to be in the 4 walls of a classroom, probably they would not have shown this much of apathy. But now going online, they have their own limitations. They have their own difficulties also to getting accustomed to this online learning. So there is passiveness. Passive learning by the students is also a negative impact. And very recently, during this period, lockdown period, in our university, we conducted getting directly connected through phone in Nera Karekrama to the students. We conducted it, and during that session we could come to know that most of the students, like at least 20 to 25% of the students, used to complain that we don't have internet facility, we belong to rural areas, we don't have any facility where these online classes run can be found out, or we can be a part of it. It's not that easy for us to get into. So that's what should we do? I remember one lady student complaining that she told, we belong to such a rural area where we don't have any internet facility at all, and how far this online classes will help me, and only my father has got a keypad mobile phone and we don't have any Android or this new sort of cell phones. So how should I get into this online coaching? It's not of any use to me, she told. That might be a fact with many such rural students who are located in such rural colleges, who are located in such rural areas, who belong to rural colleges. They might be facing such a difficulty in accepting this online teaching. So there is passive learning on part of the students. Unprepared teachers for online education. If you just, as a UGC is asking all the universities to get the feedback of all the stakeholders, and our university has made an attempt to get the feedback of all the students, teachers, parents, and all the stakeholders. How do they react for this online education? And you might be observing that even in Facebook Live, all stakeholders have raised a question as to what extent this online education is helpful to the students when it is not possible to reach every student at the nook and corner of a particular rural area. Because on the one side, teachers themselves are not ready completely for this online education, imparting this online education to the needy, and on the other hand, themselves are not having that much of receptivity level to get easily into this online education. So naturally, this unpreparedness on part of both the teachers and the students has got to say that it has a negative impact on higher education. Then changing format of student recruitment. Earlier, lot of opportunities were there for students, but now you look into the job market, downsizing is there, and I mean the employees are asked to go out. If at all they log into a particular company or a particular employer, the first message which comes to the employees is that you are sent out, you have been terminated because of this COVID. So we don't have an opportunity for you to continue in our organization. You can leave. If such is the position for the students in the field of recruitment, what would be the future for students is a question. So this is a negative impact of COVID on higher education. Then I have made a SWOT analysis of these implications of COVID on higher education. The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is a small attempt which I have made, and deliberations can be made on this during the period of Q&A. If you take into consideration the strengths, infrastructure revamping will act as a strength of the institutions and universities, because hitherto if you had only traditional type of infrastructure, now you can easily get into new infrastructure because it is being demanded by the online teaching and coaching. So e-commerce will peg up. ICT services and ICT enabled services will also go up. Virtual and digital classrooms will develop. This is a positive and strength. And e-content. So everything which you want to offer to the students will definitely be put on the e-content list. So it will strengthen the educational institutes. E-offices will develop. Work from home might put the employees and teachers at ease. That's a strength. Then cutting down on cost and staff. Hitherto, whatever you used to spend in terms of cost on these facilities and then staff would reduce drastically. You'll be cutting down. Of course, if you argue on other side, capital expenditure will increase because of new infrastructure, but still you can reduce it. The cost can be reduced because the number gets reduced. The weaknesses part, if you look into, capital expenditure will grow alarmingly. And teacher in the thought of reorientation is a must, because until you prepare the teachers who teach online and students to receive whatever the teaching is being made through this blended offer, reorientation is a must. That becomes a weakness on part of the institutions. Unless it is prepared, you cannot offer. Then students' reach is doubtful. As I was telling right now, that every student in the nook and corner cannot be reached because of this connectivity, as well as the internet facilities, availability of internet facilities might hamper the reach. So it is doubtful. Enrollment will all definitely be reduced because of this. Then if you look into the opportunities, you will get advanced infrastructure. Whether it is required or not, you will have to go for it. So definitely advanced infrastructure will be there as an opportunity to improve the educational institution scenario. Then new and change the curriculum for blended teaching requirements is an opportunity. That's the way in which the government is making an attempt right now to develop a model curriculum so that the blended teaching can be offered to the students. Then it can become more techno-savvy. The educational institutions hitherto were to be too conventional in nature, too traditional in nature, now can become techno-savvy. It's an opportunity for them to get turned into techno-savvy. There are number of threats also. Vulnerability. It's not that easy to make accept the students for online coaching. Uncertainty is there, looking at the number of we have been conducting in our university in all the departments online classes. The rate of attendance, if you consider, it is only 50 to 75% of the total number of students in a class. So what about the rest? Uncertainty hangs on. Complexity will be there because students will not have an opportunity to have a discussion with the students. Only the presentation part of online class will be made, and if at all they want to have an elaborate discussion with the teacher, it is not possible due to so many constraints. Ambiguity will be there. Then there is an emotional effect. That is, students go on depression, being at home and not being able to get to the expectations of the teachers, being at home. Getting accustomed to these online courses for them is a challenge, and they will go into depression. Many of the students, we have seen that no, we are not in a position to understand whatever the teacher is offering online. So this becomes a threat for the educational institutions. Then foreign scholarships and courses and even collaborations will definitely come down. Scholarship will not come from foreign countries because of the reduced enrollment. The courses which the students used to take abroad, they will definitely come down. The collaborations with the countries outside our country, that is foreign countries, will definitely come down. New recruitments will also suffer. These are the threats the students and the teachers community may have to face recently due to the bad impact of this COVID. Then, what immediate steps the educational institutions may have to adhere to? Number one, offering short-term courses, diploma courses, scholarships, and fee concessions. Say offering short-term courses and diploma courses, it's an order by itself by the UGC that now it's wide open for the students, not just to get. Earlier, UGC used to restrict for dual programs, but now it's been made open to the students that they can go for one regular course and one online course, and they can get dual degrees simultaneously. So such short-term courses along with the main courses can also be offered to the students by the educational institutions just to equip the students, prepare them for job market. Diploma courses can be offered. There will be a rate of the reduction in the offer in the form of scholarship to the students from the government side. The institutions, both public and private, may have to offer additional scholarships to the students, not only to owe the students to increase the gross enrollment ratio, but even to give financial push to the students to stay on and study the courses offered to the students. Fee concessions should be offered to the students because GER will get affected because of this entire pandemic. So that's why students will be at loss. So that have to be given some cushion, and this is possible if concessions are offered to students. UGC has created many platforms. You might be knowing Swayam, MOOCs, and the central government's Diksha platform is offering n number of such courses. They are increasing. Every day such courses are offered, and the number is getting increased. The list is getting exhaustive day by day, and then such courses can be offered to the students through universities and institutions, making use of these platforms so that the students can be equipped properly along with the main courses. Rapid increase of mobile internet users in India, which is expected to reach 85% households by 2024. Technology is enabling ubiquitous access and personalization of education, even in the remotest parts of the country, may be possible. So that's why going online may not totally affect. I don't advocate that entire thing should be given online. Blended teaching will definitely help in the days to come because we are marching towards 85% of the households getting trapped under this internet, mobile internet. Then major challenge in edutech reforms at the national level is the seamless integration of technology in the present Indian education system, which is the most diverse and the largest in the world, with more than 15 lakh schools and 50,000 higher education institutions. So that's why these platforms are to be fully utilized by the educationists, academicians, and institutions so that they can improvise their offer to the students. It's also important to establish quality assurance mechanisms because and quality benchmarks for online learning by Indian higher education institutions as well as e-learning platforms because number of such platforms are cropping up, mushrooming of such institutions. I mean, such platforms are there where it's a difficult one for the user to make use of such a useful platform. Where to go and how to select is a question. So that's why proper perceptual mapping is required. The thinking, fitting ourselves into the shoes of the students, we need to think what should be the offer. So mapping is required. As many e-learning players offer multiple courses, the same subjects with different levels of certifications, methodology, and assessment parameters. So everyone will equip now, especially private service providers will mushroomingly come up now with all such platforms. Now it is up to us to look into which is the proper way of making a selection to make an offer to the students. So the quality of the courses may differ across different e-learning platforms. Hence, proper assessment is required, and educational institutions have to make use of only such useful offers, platforms, and make use of the same to get the students under the same net. The courses on Indian traditional knowledge systems in the fields of yoga, Indian medicines, architecture, hydraulics, ethnobotany, metallurgy, and agriculture should be integrated unattempted with a present-day mainstream university education to serve the humanity at large. Because all these are restricted to certain educational institutions only who specialize in certain fields. So now it's up to the universities and educational institutions to bring all these into mainstreams such that you can get integrated with the present mainstream education and make an offer to the society which is demanding something which is not existing, something which is new to them, something in a blended form can only be offered, and you would be serving this humanity at large if you consider all these things while developing the content education, that is curriculum, which is to be offered to the students. So with this brief presentation, I think I have given you the overview of the impact of this COVID-19 on the higher education with certain statistics. And then now it is up to us to answer all such questions which raise in front of us, joining our hands together as academicians and serve the purpose of the humanity and the student community, looking the interest of teachers on the one hand.
Thank you, madam, for your valuable informative presentation. Madam Anita, madam, we have
Yes.
few questions. Can we go ahead, madam?
Yeah. Just I wanted to say something before I start giving answers to the questions which would be raised by the students. I'm extremely sorry for not having joined much earlier. I don't know whether Professor YP Edpadi Taya sir is there or has he left?
No, he's not in the line, madam.
Okay, fine.
Principal is there and our director is there.
I take this opportunity to give my salutations to all the dignitaries, Professor Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Edpadi Taya sir, and Professor Puvaya madam, and then I think the president of the college, IK Biddappa sir, and Dr. Anand Karla, and Dr. Raghavendra, who is coordinating the entire program. So I would be very happy if the presentation was taken very positively, and if there are a number of questions which are to be answered by me, I am very much here. So students and participants, research scholars can raise some questions and we can have a deliberation on it.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah.
Madam, there is a question from Ramesh Mulia.
Yeah.
Do you think online teaching will become effective to the first year degree students?
Yeah. First of all, we have been watching from the last 3 months, 3 to 3.5 months, that the government is putting it's pressurizing in a way that we have to go online, and it has become inevitable also. Because if we say that we are going offline, this pandemic is not leaving us to go for offline because we are fearing of. Parents are not ready to send the students to the colleges. So I remember we had conducted, my voice is echoing, Dr. Raghavendra?
No, madam, you can go ahead, madam.
Yeah. So I think in the last 10 years, we had conducted a research. Dr. Ashok Anand, director of Sidwin School of Business, had taken up a research work on this, and we had visualized that after down the line 10 years, definitely we are marching towards online education. So this pandemic has pushed us very early that we need to go for online education. So whether we require it or not, we have to accept this online education. But whether it is completely online is questionable, because we have some remote places, remote areas where colleges are located in villages where this network cannot reach, and students may not be able to come up and take up online classes and all. So we need to go for a blended forum. Certain things which we can give on online on the one hand, and on the other we can think of conducting some formal classes also offline, so that students can get the blended form of education. And the question raised by Mooli, that is whether for first degree students, whether it is first year, second year, or third year, if it is inevitable, we need to go for it. But the preparedness on our part, education should be proper. That's all. Because we need to go for it. If we say that we don't want, we'll be left over. We'll not be able to reach the students at all, because online is going to become the forum of education in the years to come. So we cannot say no to it, but we need to prepare. A lot of homework should be done by the educationists as to how to reach the students and how effectively reach the students. Not just reaching, you will have to think in terms of whether, say for example, some students raise a question as to how the problem oriented papers can be taught online. We need to work out some templates, and we need to work out some means with which, some yardsticks are to be used, with which we can effectively make a presentation of such problem oriented papers also. So if we say no, it's not possible. We have to agree that we have to go online. Would you agree?
Yeah, madam. Can I move to the next question?
Yeah,
Your
sure.
answer is clarified with Ramesh Mole, sir.
Yeah,
So there is
Ramesh
one
has
question
sent
from
it. Yes, ma'am.
Sashikant Kurodi.
Yeah.
Please tell about how to help those students who do not have proper network connections or
Yeah.
smartphones.
Okay, sure. It is difficult right now because say 30 to 40% of the student population, they live in remote areas and villages. It is difficult, but at least we can prepare certain such offline materials for those students who cannot be traced in online mode. So we can prepare certain materials, that is offline materials, and make them reach the students who are not in a position to come to the mainstream. So we can help them offering additional inputs. If they are capable of coming online, it's well and good. They would also try, because they will compare themselves with the students who stay in the urban areas, definitely. So they will also try to come out to the mainstream. If at all there are students who are left out, I think we need to, as educationists, we need to prepare certain offline material also, and then make them reach the rural students. Okay.
Thank you, madam. Madam, our principal have some question.
Yeah.
He is going to ask directly to you.
Yeah, sure.
Over to you, madam.
Yes.
Hello, madam.
Good morning. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm very late to join.
Yeah, it was very informative, madam. I have a question, not a question, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Can the universities approach the government to provide financial help to the universities to help them establish infrastructural facilities, necessary digital required setup, equipments, logistics to get good connectivity and reach out to maximum number of students by establishing a total built-in compact digital unit so that teachers can become total techno teachers.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
I-
Yeah. That's a suggestion. It's
Yeah.
not a question. Yeah, true,
Yeah.
madam. True,
Yeah,
madam.
can the university approach
Yeah.
the government to do that?
Yeah, that's what universities will do, definitely, because
Yeah.
there are number of such affiliated colleges which come under the umbrella of an university. So
Yeah.
now the university's job is, if at all they want to go online completely, I
Yeah.
told you repeatedly in my lecture also that preparedness is required, because
Yeah.
you need to invest on e-content, you need
Yeah.
to invest on infrastructure which are required for development of such content. For
Yeah.
all these, probably the universities themselves would not be able to generate their own money and do away with it. So
Yeah.
government's support and help is very much required. And
Yeah.
you might be observing that even at
Yeah.
the primary level and secondary education schooling
Yeah.
level also, our
Yeah.
education minister is offering so many measures that this can be done and all. Even at the
Yeah.
higher education level now, as of now, we have been observing that new education policy has been implemented, and shortly it is going to be implemented, and it has already been tabled.
Yeah.
So now this
Thank you,
new
thank you.
education policy also gives lot of avenues for the students as well as educational institutions to come up
Yeah.
with online education. Definitely, right now probably the universities might feel little difficult to approach government in seeking some funds, because we do all understand the difficulty of the government right now, because it is facing so much of difficulty in funding this COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right now it may not be possible, but this moving towards online education is not just a short span
Yeah.
activity. Definitely it will continue for long years from now.
Yeah.
So naturally the government will also sense the difficulty of the institutions and universities, and it
Yeah.
will definitely in the years to come will come forward to finance our institutions. And most probably the universities will also put forth the request in front of the governments and definitely seek some financial assistance from the
Yeah.
government side also. And in the meanwhile, what I personally feel is, now the teachers, academia, and the academicians themselves will have to come forward also to
Yeah.
help the students as well as the government in
Yeah.
putting their efforts in building the e-content with the facilities they have as of now.
Yeah, that's true.
So they have to utilize the internal resources. They have not
Yeah.
just the money I'm telling, the intellectual resources they can make use
I
of,
know.
and build up e-content for the students. Right now it is the start. Every start will have to have some teething trouble. So now let the start it. So we will start with positive thinking, and then
Yeah.
in the years to come, I suppose even the government will come forward to fund us and
Yeah.
definitely help improve our quality of education.
Yeah, because in future it's both a blend technique like the
Yes.
online offline. So there's no escape from it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for a good suggestion.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, one more question regarding the economics. Accurate and timely economic data are crucial for informing economic policy decisions,
Yes.
especially during a crisis. But COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the production of many statistics as a major key.
Yes.
So how such disruption can be tackled? This question is asked by Rashita Nanjappa.
Yeah, sure. Actually, this is a situation which was totally new to everybody. Nobody anticipated, and we don't have any precedence for such things, because I heard and read in some literature that during 1918 one French flu had come, which has put all the people into devastating situation. But now after such a long gap of a century, I suppose, so we are facing this pandemic, and which is unprecedented. We do not know. For everybody, it's a difficult thing, because how to come out of this crisis is a question in front of us. But even as that economics professor has or student has raised this question as to there would be a data gap. True. But our technology has so much that as far as possible, the data required would have been collected online. The offline part of it probably might have suffered, but online collection would not have suffered. They would have conducted certain surveys and they would have done it online only. So might be, if at all there are certain gaps, probably they would plug it with immediate resume of the work. If the officers resume such works, probably survey officers and Bureau of Economics and Statistics, all these officers will definitely plug up the gaps and they will find out what is required for the national data or the international level data requirement. It is up to them now to plug the gaps which have been created by this pandemic.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you for your interactions. It looks like I have covered all the questions related to this session. Before going
Yeah.
to the last phase, there is an information for the participants. The feedback link will be posted in the chat box. So in the Google Meet as well as in the YouTube, you can fill the feedback form for your e-certificates.
Yeah.
Now,
Before
ma'am.
vote of thanks is given, let me thank all the organizers, especially Professor Puvamma, who has spoken to me several times before I could come to his. And unfortunately, I could not give complete time to you because of some sudden program which was fixed. And DCM inaugurated this particular function today in our university. And being a statutory officer, I need to be here. So that's why I couldn't join much earlier. Definitely, I'll make it once again whenever it is required in the near future. And I thank your president also, I.K. Bidapul sir. And especially my respectful salutations to Dr. Y.P. sir.
Thank you, ma'am. It was really
because he was my immediate senior and he has given lot of advice to us because he is our commerce family member. I belong to commerce family, so that I have great respect to him. He has guided us on several occasions and I have invited him to our university several times. So I felt very happy to share the platform with him, but unfortunately I could make it early. And even I thank Dr. Anand Karla, who has taken up this initiative to invite me and sent the invite to me on time. And Dr. Raghavendra also has coordinated the entire program. Thanks to one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Now I request Dr. Ananda Karla, Head of the Department of Commerce, to thank everyone. Now, vote of thanks by Dr. Ananda Karla. Over to you, sir.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಇಂದಿನ ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ ದ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕೋವಿಡ್-19 ಆನ್ ಹೈಯರ್ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಇದರ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷತೆಯನ್ನು ವಹಿಸಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಯಶಸ್ವಿಯಾಗಿ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಿದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಐ.ಕೆ. ಬಿದ್ದಪ್ಪ, ನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರು ಕಾವೇರಿ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಗೋಣಿಕೊಪ್ಪಲು, ಇವರಿಗೆ ಕಾವೇರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ವಿರಾಜಪೇಟೆ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಇಂದಿನ ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ನ ದಿಕ್ಸೂಚಿ ಭಾಷಣವನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯದ ಉಪಕುಲಪತಿಗಳು, ನನ್ನ ಗುರುಗಳಾದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಪಿ. ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಎಡಪಾಯತರ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಹೃದಯ ತುಂಬಿದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ದ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕೋವಿಡ್-19 ಆನ್ ಹೈಯರ್ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ವಿಷಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸವಿವರವಾಗಿ ಮನಮುಟ್ಟುವಂತೆ ತಮ್ಮ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯವನ್ನು ಮಂಡಿಸಿದ ನನ್ನ ಸಂಶೋಧನೆಯ ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶಕರಾದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಅನಿತಾ ಎಚ್.ಎಸ್, ಕುಲಸಚಿವರು ಮೌಲ್ಯಮಾಪನ, ದಾವಣಗೆರೆ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ದಾವಣಗೆರೆ, ಇವರಿಗೆ ಕಾವೇರಿ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಗೋಣಿಕೊಪ್ಪಲು ಮತ್ತು ಕಾವೇರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ವಿರಾಜಪೇಟೆ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ತುಂಬ ಹೃದಯದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಇಂದಿನ ಈ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಮಟ್ಟದ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ನ ಅತಿಥಿಗಳನ್ನು ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸಿ ಅವರನ್ನು ಪರಿಚಯಿಸಿದ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಎಸ್ ಪೂವಮ್ಮ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ನಮ್ಮ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ನ ಯಶಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಮೂಲ ಕಾರಣರಾದಂತ ರಾಘವೇಂದ್ರ ಎಲ್ಆರ್, ಕನ್ವೀನರ್ ಐಪಿಎಸ್ಸಿ ಮತ್ತು ಮುಖ್ಯಸ್ಥರು BBA ವಿಭಾಗ, ಇವರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಈ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ ವಿವಿಧ ಕಾಲೇಜುಗಳ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಿಗೂ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಈ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆಸುವಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ರೀತಿಯ ಸಹಕಾರ ನೀಡಿದ ಕಾವೇರಿ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಗೋಣಿಕೊಪ್ಪಲು ಇದರ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರು, ಕಾರ್ಯದರ್ಶಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲಾ ನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರಿಗೂ ಸರ್ವ ಸದಸ್ಯರಿಗೂ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಮತ್ತು ಇಂದಿನ ಈ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ ಯಶಸ್ವಿಯಾಗಲು ಸಹಕಾರ ನೀಡಿದ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕ ವರ್ಗದವರಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತು ಬೋಧಕೇತರ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿಗಳಿಗೂ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Thank you to you also, sir. Now it's time for national anthem.
Thank you.
Thank you, one and all. Again, the feedback link is in the chat box. Another 15 minutes it will be active. Please fill the feedback form for your certificates.